I'm only a second generation of someone who has made the long walk. My grandfather, and that was because he married my grandmother in 1911 when she was 15 and he was 53. It was arranged marriage. So that is how I'm only a second generation. I was lucky. I got to see him as an old man. I was 5 years old when he died, and I can still remember him. But I have gotten a lot of stories through the years from my grandmother. My grandmother lived some 40 years after he died, and I used to herd sheep with her, and then we used to sit around the campfire in the evening and would ask her a question, and she told us a lot of stories about him. Then, of course, my mother and my father. My grandfather is the one who made the long walk and came back. He was 6 years old, he says, when he was captured. And I have, I'm familiar with the long walk, everything that took place. So I calculated that he was captured probably in late August or early September of 1863, because he said that at that time the corn was just about roasting time, so it's usually about that time. And then he was 10 years old when he made the walk back. The Army gave the Navajos July 20th, 1863 to come in and surrender. Of course, nobody was willing to do that. And then they said that after July 20th, then they will be considered as hostile. And then so when no Navajos surrendered, General Carleton, who was the commanding officer of New Mexico Territory, ordered that all Navajos were enemies and they were to be shot on sight. All the women and children and the old people will be captured, but all the men will be shot on sight. And then he also issued an order that all New Mexicans are free to go out and raid into Navajo country. So, and then this includes the Pueblos, the Utes, and the Comanches. And then he gave an order that any Pueblos or any other Native Americans who give aid to the Navajos will be considered as enemies. So it was open season, for the Navajos. The Navajo campaign was carried out during the Civil War, and the Civil War ended in 1865. Christopher Carson, he was born in Kentucky, and then he was one of 8 children. And when he was young, his family moved to Missouri, and his father died. And then so his mother remarried, and he was given to a saddle maker, to learn a trade. But he didn't like it. He ran away to the west, and so that's where he built his fortune. General Carleton ordered Carson to round out the Mescalero Apaches, and he tried to get out of it, but he managed to do it in 3 months. And then when he got through with that, Carson ordered him to round up the Navajos. Again, he didn't want to. He tried to resign his commission, but General Carleton would not take no for an answer. And so that's how he happened to be to undertake that. And during the campaign, he just wanted to go home to Taos to be with his wife. General Carleton has been after him to penetrate Canyon de Chelly, which was the Navajo stronghold. And he was reluctant to do so, and he came up with all kinds of excuses. It was not until January of 1864, when there was about 2 feet of snow, that he went in. And but he didn't find any Navajos. They had abandoned it, but there were hogans, there were fruit trees, there were storage bin. So he set about and destroyed all of those. Some of the grains, hay and wheat and so forth like that, he had them cart back to the fort, for army use, and then to feed animals, and those that he can't carry, he burned them. And then he went back and cut down fruit trees. And it was estimated that somewhere around 3,000 to 7,000 trees were cut. And so this is what broke the Navajo resistance. So he knew Indians very well, their habits and their culture, and he also was able to speak a little bit of each. And so as a scout, he was very, very honest and that in dealing with the Indians. But in a fight, he was ruthless. Carson actually made only a few military expeditions into the Navajo country. Most of the damage was done by the Utes and the Comanches, and that they knew the Navajo country. They knew the habits of the Navajos. They knew where the Navajos' hiding places are. So when the army went out, who knew nothing about Navajos or their country or their habits, they would come back very frustrated. They'd be going out for weeks at a time and come back with nothing. Maybe a few stranded horses and sheep and a few captives and things like that. But the Utes were much more successful. And then the order of General Carleton was that the Utes will be paid. The Navajos were under the impression that once they surrendered, they're all going to be killed. Now, this was something that was practiced by the Spaniards and the Mexicans. And so that's what they were expecting. And so this is one of the reasons why that many of them are reluctant to surrender. And then they start the Long Walk period between February 1864 to July of 1864. During those months, especially the February, March, April, when the weather was very harsh, that's when all the horror stories that we hear, took place. By 1864, there were thousands, like about 6,000 or 7,000, 8,000 Navajos that were surrendering. And they were huge. Some of the caravans were like 10 miles long, and only a few troops to escort them. My grandfather, went in late summer. So he says that they were transported in wagons that were pulled by ox. And he said they had these Mexicans with these bullwhip, walking along. The most harsh one was in the early spring, late winter, early spring, 1864. It was the harsh winter, the snow, and then many of them froze to death. It was too much for the army to handle. And then also the Pueblos, Utes, and Comanches, and New Mexicans, when they find that these long line of caravan, I guess it was not just one. Sometimes, you know, there'll be a group here and several miles, another group like this. They will come down and raid into it and steal livestock, whatever livestock they have, and children, and so a lot of children, you know, were snatched, you know, by these, and then of course, you know, Navajos didn't have any weapons. They tried to fight back. They were killed. Today, you know, because of the drought, you know, the river gets only a few feet deep, you know, in the spring. But at that time, it used to be raging. You know, the San Juan River was like that too. And so, in the spring of 1864, that's when they had to cross that. When the Rio Grande was high, and that it is true that many of them drowned, and that of course, you know, the military escort couldn't do very much. It was just more or less up to the people, and yes, these things happen. The same way with, you know, during the winter, too, you know, when it was freezing, and many of them froze to death. And but the fact of the matter is that the military was unprepared. Kit Carson, his health was, you know, was getting down, and then so he once more resigned, and this time he just went home. And about a month before the treaty of 1868 was signed, he died. Carleton was relieved command from there. He was not in command when the treaty was negotiated. The people, particularly the New Mexican newspaper from Santa Fe, began criticizing the army for the way the Navajos were being treated. And so anytime there's a problem with the government, you know, when they go to investigate, they just don't go investigate and get it done with. They go investigate and then had another investigation, another investigation like that, you know. So they have what they call the Graves investigation committee came out, and they gave their report, and then they sent out the Peace Commission again. And this is the one that General Sherman was the head. And when General Sherman was appalled by the way that the Navajos were treated. And then that's when they began negotiating for peace. Barboncito, the people were asked to select 10 men to represent them, and then to elect one to be the head speaker, and that was Barboncito. Barboncito was from the Caño del Muerto area. He was of the Maitishkishne clan. He was in short status, And Navajo's calling us Tintagai, because he had a mustache. And he was an outstanding warrior in his youth, and so that's how he became a leader. He was also a great orator. The Bosco Redondo experience was an evil experience, very, very stressful experience. But we came away with our land, even though it was only a fraction of the original land that we occupied. But through the years, through various congressional legislation, court decisions, and presidential order, we fourfold that land. The land that we have is 4 times as large as the original reservation that was given to us. And then we built up our economy on the sheep. The reason for the expansion of land is mostly because we have sheep, and sheep need more land.